Welcome back to Us Mint Mysteries. Tonight, we're diving deep into the world of the Abraham Lincoln penny, the most familiar coin in your pocket, yet one that could secretly be worth a small fortune. What if I told you that the change sitting in your old coffee can, your dresser drawer, or that forgotten jar of pennies could hold a hidden treasure, worth thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars? The year was 1969, a time of change, hope, and history in the making. But while America was looking to the moon, the U.S. Mint in San Francisco was striking a few tiny copper coins that would someday leave even veteran collectors speechless. I'm talking about the 1969 Lincoln cent. And if you have one even in extra fine condition, you might be sitting on a small fortune without realizing it. At first glance, this penny looks ordinary. You see the familiar bust of President Abraham Lincoln, facing right, the motto "In God We Trust" proudly above his head, and that small S mint mark below the date. The reverse shows the iconic Lincoln Memorial, simple, strong, familiar. It's a coin you've seen millions of times. But this little copper piece hides a mystery that shook the numismatic world and turned ordinary pocket change into a six-figure legend. The story begins when collectors started noticing something odd about certain 1969s pennies. The letters "In Liberty" and "In God We Trust" looked doubled, as if the coin had been stamped twice, ever so slightly off. It wasn't a trick of the eye, it was a true double die obverse, one of the rarest and most dramatic minting errors ever discovered. At first, even the Secret Service thought these coins were fakes. They confiscated them, believing counterfeiters were behind it. But tests proved otherwise. These pennies were real, genuine mint errors, struck in San Francisco under the official presses of the U.S. Mint itself. Now here's where it gets unbelievable. A normal 1969s penny in extra fine condition might fetch you a few cents, maybe a few dollars if it's a solid example. But if you spot that doubling on the date, the word "Liberty," or the motto above Lincoln's head, you're looking at one of the most valuable modern coins ever made. Back in 2018, one of these 1969s double die cents sold for over $126,000 at auction. Another, with near-perfect red color and flawless surfaces, crossed $150,000. And an uncirculated example graded by PCGs as Ms. 64 Red shocked everyone when it fetched more than $500,000. That's $500,000 for a single penny. Think about that for a moment, a 1-cent coin turning into $500,000. Simply because of a minting accident you could barely notice with the naked eye. That's why collectors still hunt these every single day. You can find guides and photos online. But the simplest trick is this. Look carefully at the date, 1969. If those numbers look thicker, almost shadowed, and the letters of Liberty seem doubled, don't spend it. Protect it, get it graded, and hold on tight. Because you might just have found a coin that could rewrite your story. In an extra fine condition, a 1969s double die can bring $35,000 to $75,000, depending on color, luster, and clarity of the doubling. And if yours has the rich, reddish copper tone, collectors call it red or red-brown, the value skyrockets even more. Imagine paying your mortgage, buying a new car, or taking that dream vacation all from a single penny that's been hiding in your collection for decades. But here's the twist most people don't know. Not all doubling on 1969 pennies is real. Some are machine doubling, caused by vibration or bounce during striking. Those are worth pennies. But the true doubled die obverse has thick, rounded letters and clear separation, especially in Liberty and the motto. That's the key difference that makes or breaks a fortune. Collectors still whisper about this coin because it represents something magical, the idea that even in something as small as a penny, history can hide an accident so powerful it changes everything. So next time you see a 1969 Lincoln cent, look closer. Under that worn copper surface might be the rarest kind of mistake, the kind that turns the ordinary into a treasure. And remember, we're just getting started. Because the next Lincoln penny on this list might surprise you even more. A coin so rare, even lifelong collectors have never seen one in person. Next up, we travel 15 years ahead, to the year 1984, a time when copper was giving way to zinc. The Cold War was still icy, and no one knew that a tiny, invisible mistake at the US Mint would create one of the most bizarre and valuable pennies in modern history. The 1984 Lincoln cent may look completely normal to the untrained eye, but beneath its simple copper tone lies one of the most talked about minting mysteries of the decade, the famous 1984 doubled-ear penny. At first glance, it's just another penny. You see Lincoln's familiar portrait, the words, "In God We Trust," arching across the top, and "Liberty" pressed clearly to the left. Everything looks the same, until you look closely at Abraham Lincoln's ear. Because on some of these coins, you'll notice something truly strange: a second earlobe, just below the first one. That's right, a doubled ear. This doubling isn't light. It's not subtle, and it's definitely not a trick of the light. It's a true double die error, meaning the die the metal stamp used to strike the coin accidentally impressed Lincoln's portrait twice, slightly misaligned. The result? A ghostly second ear, perfectly visible and incredibly rare. When this error was first discovered in the mid-1980s, collectors could hardly believe it. Some dismissed it as fake, others as minor. But as more authentic examples surfaced, certified by the Professional Coin Grading Service and Annex, the legend of the 1984 doubled-ear Lincoln cent was born. Now, let's talk numbers, because this is where things start to get thrilling. A regular 1984 penny, even in extra fine condition, is worth about 1 cent, maybe a few cents to a roll hunter. But the 1984 doubled-ear penny in extra fine condition can bring $250 to $500, and in higher grades, $1,500 to $3,000. That's already impressive. But the real shocker comes when you find one in brilliant, uncirculated, mint red condition. Those have sold for as high as $18,000, and some estimates suggest that an untouched, flawless example could break $25,000 or more in a major auction. Imagine pulling one from a jar of old change, a penny from your childhood, a coin that's been sitting unnoticed for 40 years, and suddenly realizing it's worth more than your first car. That's the kind of magic this hobby brings. The key to spotting this hidden treasure lies in that ear. Take a magnifier or a jeweler's loupe and look closely at Lincoln's jawline. You'll see a faint, curved shape just below the ear. That's the second earlobe. Real doubling shows smooth, rounded shapes, not sharp, flat lines like machine doubling. The difference might look small, but it makes all the difference between a penny and a payday, even in extra fine condition. With light wear on Lincoln's cheek and beard, but clear features overall, this coin can be a serious collector's prize. The richer the copper tone, the more appealing it looks to serious buyers. And if it's the red-brown variety, that beautiful warm copper glow, it can command prices that would make anyone stop and stare. But there's another layer of mystery here. The 1984 double-ear isn't known from all mints. It was struck only at the Philadelphia Mint, which means no mint mark under the date. That detail alone helps narrow down the search. So if you find a 1984 penny without a mint mark, flip it over, examine that ear, and if you see that strange double shape, don't spend it. Protect it. You may have just found one of the most fascinating Lincoln cents of the 1980s. Coins like this remind us that not all treasures shine in gold or silver. Some are copper, small, and hiding in plain sight. The 1984 double-ear Lincoln cent proves that even the tiniest minting error can turn a simple penny into a conversation piece worth thousands. So, the next time you empty your pocket change, don't rush. Take a moment, look closer, because sometimes, fortune hides right under your fingertips, in the shape of a doubled ear on a coin you've seen your whole life. Moving on to the next treasure, we travel back once more, this time to 1970. A year when the world was changing faster than ever. The Beatles had just broken up. Gas was 36 cents a gallon, and in Denver, Colorado, the U.S. Mint was quietly striking a coin that would later become one of the most hunted Lincoln cents of all time. The 1970 Lincoln penny. At first glance, it looks like just another penny. The D mint mark sits proudly beneath the date, marking its Denver origin. Lincoln's calm, thoughtful profile stares to the right, surrounded by the motto, "In God We Trust," and the familiar word, "Liberty," on the back. The Lincoln Memorial still stands, crisp and classic. But for those who know where to look, the 1970D hides a story that only true collectors can appreciate. A story of tiny details, big mistakes, and shocking value. You see, the 1970D penny doesn't owe its fame to a double die or dramatic misstrike. Its mystery is subtler, and it's tied to an overlooked variety that only seasoned eyes can catch: the small date vs. large date difference. Most people have never noticed it, but the mint actually used two different date styles when producing 1970 Lincoln cents: a large date and a small date. And while both were made in San Francisco, a few subtle date style errors also appeared in Denver issues, sparking decades of curiosity among collectors. Now here's where it gets fascinating. In fine condition, a standard 1970D penny might only be worth a few cents. But if you happen to find one with unusual die features like misaligned strikes, doubled mint marks, or even faint traces of die deterioration, doubling your coin's value could rise dramatically. A simple circulation find could jump from pocket change to hundreds, even thousands of dollars. Depending on the error, collectors, especially prize coins with the RPM error that stands for repunched mint mark. During 1970, the Denver Mint used hand-punched mint marks, meaning the D was applied separately to each die. Sometimes, the mint worker didn't align it perfectly, leading to a faint shadow D just above or beside the main one. Those are called 1970D RPM varieties, and they can be worth a surprising amount. Even in fine condition, one of these could bring $150 to $300, and in uncirculated red condition, you're looking at $1,000 to $2,500. But there's more. A few rare off-center 1970D pennies where part of the design is missing because the coin wasn't seated properly during striking have sold for $5,000 or more, depending on how far off the strike is. Add a double strike or partial collar error, and you're talking about values that can reach $15,000, even $20,000 for a coin that started as 1 cent. Imagine that: a fine condition penny, brown with age, a little wear on Lincoln's cheek and beard, yet hiding an error that could pay your rent for months. That's the beauty of this hobby. The tiniest imperfection can transform a common coin into a collector's dream. Even more amazing, a handful of 1970D Lincoln cents struck on foreign planchets, blank coins meant for other countries, have been discovered. One was struck on a thinner aluminum planchet intended for a 1 cent of O coin, and it sold for over $25,000 at auction. Another, struck on a bronze planchet, sold for $35,000. These were pure minting accidents, and they prove that anything's possible when it comes to US coinage. Now, in fine condition, your 1970D might not look flashy, light wear, smooth surfaces, and a soft brown patina. But even so, it's worth examining closely. Look under magnification at the mint mark. Search for doubling, repunching, or off-center details, because you might be holding a small piece of minting history. One of those rare errors that slipped quietly through quality control, only to resurface decades later in the hands of a lucky collector. And if you think the 1970D can't surprise you any further, remember this: an uncirculated example with the dramatic RPM sold for over $4,800 in a heritage auction. A penny worth less than a cent to the government, now valued like a gold coin to collectors. That's the power of rarity, and the thrill that keeps treasure hunters searching roll after roll, year after year. Now, let's rewind to 1964, year that marked the end of an era in US coinage. The nation was mourning the loss of President Kennedy. Silver coins still jingled in every pocket, and the mint was racing to keep up with an America that couldn't seem to get enough change. But deep inside the Denver Mint, something unexpected was happening. Among billions of ordinary copper pennies struck that year, a handful were created with flaws, varieties, and mysteries that collectors still talk about today. This is the story of the 1964D Lincoln penny, a coin that looks simple, Until you really look closer. At first glance, the 1964D cent feels like just another piece of nostalgia. It's got that rich copper tone, the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln facing right, the tiny D mint mark just beneath the date, and on the reverse, the proud Lincoln Memorial standing tall. But what makes this year fascinating is not just its design. It's the chaos that happened behind the scenes at the mint. In 1964, the US was facing a massive coin shortage. Demand was skyrocketing, and the mint was under pressure to strike as many coins as possible. Fast. Dies were overused, mint marks were hand-punched, and quality control was stretched to the limit. And that's when the mistakes began. Among ordinary 1964D pennies, a small number show repunched mint marks, or RPMs, because the D mint mark was applied manually to each die. Workers occasionally punched it slightly off, then tried to correct it. The result? A tiny shadow D just above, below, or beside the main one. These RPM errors are subtle, but once you see them, you can't unsee them. And collectors go crazy for them. Even in extra fine condition, a clean 1964D RPM can fetch $150 to $350, depending on clarity. But if you find one in red or red-brown and circulated condition, you're looking at $1,000, $2,000, even $5,000 in value. And that's just the beginning, because a few 1964D pennies have been discovered with dramatic die cracks, off-center strikes, and even missing letters in the inscriptions. These minting flaws can send values soaring into the five-figure range, especially when authenticated by PCGs or NGC. Now here's a twist very few people know. In 1964, the mint was preparing to switch coin compositions and designs, including the removal of silver from dimes and quarters. As part of that shift, test planchets and dies were being moved and reworked across facilities. That means transitional errors were possible. Coins struck on leftover 1963 planchets or on blanks meant for other denominations. A handful of these have been reported, and they've brought jaw-dropping prices. One example sold for over $25,000, even without dramatic errors. A beautiful extra fine 1964D penny tells a story all its own. The light wear across Lincoln's cheek, the smooth fields, and that subtle shine that only copper can give. It's a reminder of a time when pennies still had weight, warmth, and history in every detail. Collectors often say that these pre-1982 cents feel alive, and they're right. They're relics of an America that still made money from metal that mattered. The true thrill, though, lies in the hunt. Thousands of roll hunters still search through old bank boxes, jars, and estate collections looking for that perfect 1964D RPM or off-center strike. And the excitement never fades, because one lucky find could mean the difference between an ordinary coin and an auction headline. In 2017, one such coin, a 1964D with a clear double-punched mint mark and almost perfect red luster, sold for nearly $7,000 for a 1-cent piece. That's the magic of the Lincoln penny. It proves that even the humblest coin can carry a hidden story, a forgotten error, and a value that defies belief. So, if you come across a 1964D penny in your collection, take your time. Use a magnifier, check the mint mark closely, and study the details around Lincoln's ear, beard, and the lettering. Because the difference between a penny and a payday might just be a second D hiding in plain sight. Next up, we head toward the late 70s. 1978, a year when disco ruled the airwaves, gasoline lines stretched for blocks, and the US Mint was cranking out billions of coins for a restless economy. But in the middle of all that copper, a few special Lincoln pennies rolled off the Denver presses, carrying something extraordinary, subtle, rare, and worth far more than their face value. This is the story of the 1978D Lincoln cent, a coin that hides its secrets beneath decades of ordinary wear. At first glance, you might think you've seen this penny 1,000 times before. The smooth portrait of Abraham Lincoln, the strong, "In God We Trust" motto, and the familiar D under the date tell you it was born in Denver. The reverse features the stately Lincoln Memorial, centered and bold. But look closer, because the seemingly ordinary coin has fooled millions. The 1978D penny is one of those coins where rarity hides in the smallest details, tiny imperfections that slipped through unnoticed. During the minting process, during the late 1970s, the mint was producing pennies at a record pace. Dies were reused and repolished far more often than normal. That meant that any tiny mistake, a repunched mint mark, a small die crack, or a double strike could create a collectible treasure that only sharp-eyed enthusiasts would ever recognize. The most sought-after variety from this year is the 1978D RPM, or repunched mint mark, because the D was still hand-punched into the die at that time. A mint worker could slightly misplace it, creating a faint shadow D right above or beside the main one. Some of these are bold, with two clear mint marks overlapping each other. And when you find one that obvious, that's when the magic happens. A fine or extra fine 1978D RPM can easily fetch $150 to $300, while a red uncirculated example glowing with its original copper shine can reach $1,000 or more. The rarest ones, with perfect doubling and sharp detail, have sold for over $3,000 at auction. And if you happen to find one with an off-center strike, a clipped planchet, or a die crack running through the design, you could be looking at $5,000 to $15,000, depending on the error's severity and overall condition. In extra fine condition, this coin still carries beauty and history. You'll notice light wear across Lincoln's jaw, cheek, and coat, but the details remain crisp, the color deep and even. Collectors love these natural copper tones because they tell a story. They're not mint fresh, but they've survived 4 decades of circulation without losing their dignity. That's what makes an extra fine coin special. It has character. Now, here's a fascinating fact. Some 1978D pennies were accidentally struck with die chips inside the Lincoln Memorial design on the reverse. These small, raised blobs of metal often appearing between the columns are known as cuds or die breaks. Depending on their size and position, they can make your penny stand out dramatically. Some of these have sold for hundreds, even thousands, especially when authenticated as genuine mint errors. And then there's the rarest of them all, the double-struck 1978D penny. Only a few are known, but one spectacular example with the clear second strike overlapping the first sold for over $20,000. A coin that started its life worth a cent, now worth more than a brand new car, simply because of one mechanical misstep. Imagine finding one of these treasures in your old change jar, a little brown penny from 1978 that's been hiding quietly for years. You tilt it under the light, and suddenly you spot it. That faint second D, that odd mark between the columns, that tiny clue that says this coin is anything but ordinary. Your heart skips a beat and you realize, this is what makes coin collecting so addictive. The thrill of discovery, the joy of history, and the shock of value all rolled into one. Even though the 1978D doesn't get as much fame as some earlier Lincoln cents, serious collectors know it's a sleeper, a coin that's quietly climbing in desirability, especially now, as copper pennies vanish from circulation. Every vintage piece from the 1970s becomes more precious with time. So before you toss your old pennies into a Coinstar machine, stop for a second. Look closely at the 1978DS. Check the mint mark, study the details, and remember, one little letter could make all the difference between a coin worth 1 cent and one worth thousands. Next up, we jump into the 21st century. The year 2002. The world had changed. Technology was booming, and many collectors thought the era of rare pennies was long gone. But the US Mint still had surprises waiting. Among the millions of modern zinc Lincoln cents struck that year, a few emerged with minting errors so wild, so unexpected, that they reignited the excitement of penny hunting all over again. At first glance, the 2002 Lincoln penny doesn't look like anything special. By then, the coin's composition had long since changed. No more solid copper, but a zinc core coated with a thin layer of copper, giving it that same familiar color, but a very different weight. Lincoln's portrait still stares proudly to the right, "In God We Trust" above his head, "Liberty" to the left, and the date, 2002, to the right. The reverse still displays the Lincoln Memorial, a design that had lasted nearly 50 years. But beneath that familiar face hides one of the most surprising modern errors in U.S. coinage: the 2002 double die and off-metal error pennies. During the early 2000s, the mint used high-speed presses to produce billions of coins per year, and while their quality control was excellent, no system is perfect. A few rare 2002 pennies left the mint with dramatic double designs, particularly on Liberty, In God We Trust, and even the date. Collectors who've seen them describe thick, rounded doubling that almost looks 3D, bold enough to see without a magnifier. When authenticated by PCGs or NGC, these errors can bring $1,500 to $3,000 in circulated condition, and in uncirculated red condition, values can jump past 10,000. But the real showstopper comes from the handful of 2002 Lincoln cent struck on wrong planchets, meaning the blank coin used was meant for another denomination. Some were struck on dime planchets, others on foreign blanks used for overseas contracts. One spectacular example, struck on a thin dime planchet, weighed less than 2.5 grams and sold for over $18,000 at auction. Imagine that: a coin smaller and lighter than a normal penny, yet worth more than a brand new car. Even in extra fine condition, your 2002 penny can hold surprises. Light wear across Lincoln's cheek and jawline, a soft sheen on the fields, and no major scratches. That's exactly the kind of detail collectors love. And if you happen to find even the slightest hint of a die crack, a misaligned rim, or that famous doubling on Liberty, you may be looking at a serious treasure hiding in plain sight. Now, here's what makes 2002 pennies fascinating. This was one of the last full production years of the Lincoln Memorial design before the mint began preparing for the Lincoln Bicentennial series in 2009. That means errors and die varieties from this era are now considered transitional and historically significant, bridging the end of one design and the beginning of another. Savvy collectors are snapping them up, knowing that in another decade, these coins could be worth far more than they are today. The 2002D Mintmark variety from Denver is also worth watching. A few examples have shown signs of die deterioration, doubling that mimic real double dies, thickening around the letters and numbers that can trick even experienced eyes. If you think you've found one, always check with a reputable grading service. The real ones with clear, rounded doubling can be worth thousands. And then there's the off-center 2002 penny, one of the most dramatic modern errors. When the coin blank isn't properly seated in the press, part of the design lands off to one side, leaving a crescent-shaped blank area. The more off-center it is, up to about 50%, the higher the value. Some of these have sold for $5,000 to $12,000, depending on how cleanly the date and mint mark appear. Think about that for a second. A modern penny from 2002, a coin younger than most cell phones, carrying a value in the thousands simply because of one imperfect strike. It's proof that even in today's machine-perfect world, human error still has a way of creating magic. Collectors often overlook the modern years, assuming newer coins can't be valuable. But as we've seen time and again, that's a costly mistake. Hidden among the billions of ordinary cents are the rare exceptions, the ones with doubling, off-metal strikes, or incomplete plating that turn a 1-cent coin into a small fortune. So, if you have a 2002 Lincoln penny, especially one from Denver, take a close look under bright light. Examine the lettering, the date, and the edges. You just might discover one of the most valuable modern mint errors still circulating today. And now, coin collectors, hold on to your seats, because we're stepping back to a year that hides one of the most unexpected Lincoln penny surprises in modern history: 1979, and specifically, the 1979D Lincoln cent struck in Denver. At first glance, it seems like just another ordinary late 70s penny, copper-colored, common, and easy to dismiss. But once you take a closer look, things start to get interesting. The 1979D penny is one of those rare examples where a normal-looking coin can hold shocking secrets, and where condition, subtle details, and minting quirks can turn a pocket change penny into a collector's dream. In extra fine condition, your 1979D penny shows the kind of gentle wear that comes only from honest circulation. Lincoln's cheek and jawline are smooth but still defined, the lettering crisp, the date clear, and the fields those flat areas around the design retain that soft reddish-brown glow that collectors love. It's the kind of coin that whispers history, carrying the warmth of age without losing its charm. But here's where things take a wild turn. 1979 was a turbulent year for the U.S. Mint. Striking pressures, die polishing, and planchet preparation often led to a flurry of small but significant mint errors. Some of these mistakes created extremely valuable varieties including double dies, die cracks, filled mint marks, and even off-metal errors that today command jaw-dropping prices. Among the most famous is the 1979D Lincoln penny struck on a dime planchet. Imagine holding a coin smaller, thinner, and lighter than a normal cent, but bearing Lincoln's design perfectly centered. That's the kind of rarity that turns heads at auctions. One such coin, verified and graded by PCGs, sold for an astonishing $22,000. Yes, a 1-cent coin smaller than a dime, lighter than a nickel, bringing in over $20,000. Another extraordinary find came from the 1979D double die obverse varieties. Though not as dramatic as the legendary 1955 or 1969s, these coins still display clear doubling on the date and lettering, especially around Liberty and In God We Trust. In extra fine condition, they can bring anywhere from $800 to $1,500, but in uncirculated red condition, the kind of luster that looks like it was minted yesterday, values can skyrocket past $10,000. And if you're one of the lucky few to stumble upon a broad strike or off-center strike 1979D penny, you might want to sit down before you check the prices. Broad-struck coins where the retaining collar fails, allowing the metal to spread out beyond its normal rim, have sold for $3,000 to $5,000 depending on centering. But the true stars are the off-center 1979Ds that still show a visible date and mint mark. One example, nearly 40% off-center, but perfectly displaying 1979D, sold for a shocking $12,600. Now, here's something even more fascinating. The Denver Mint in 1979 used several master hubs and working dies that year, some of which began to show die deterioration, doubling that worn, fuzzy look around the letters that can easily be mistaken for a real double die. Most are worthless, but a few have been confirmed as genuine double dies, making careful inspection essential. Collectors love these subtle varieties because they tell the story of a mint struggling to maintain perfection at mass production scale. What makes the 1979D truly special isn't just its age or errors, it's that it bridges two eras of American coinage. It's one of the last full copper Lincoln cents, composed of 95% copper, just before the U.S. Mint switched to zinc-coated planchets in 1982. That alone makes every well-preserved 1979 penny a tangible piece of pre-zinc American history. Even without errors, a 1979D in pristine red uncirculated condition can sell for $2,000 to $3,000, simply because of its luster, eye appeal, and growing scarcity of high-grade examples. And in a world where metal prices and collector demand keep rising, these pre-1982 copper coins are quietly becoming the new gold of penny collecting. So, if you have a 1979D Lincoln penny sitting in a drawer, take another look. Check for a smaller size, lighter weight, doubled lettering, or unusual thickness signs of an off-metal strike. Examine the date and mint mark under magnification. The tiniest detail could reveal a fortune hidden in plain sight. And now, we arrive at the final coin in this extraordinary lineup, one that looks so ordinary, so dark and worn, that most people wouldn't give it a second glance. But that would be a mistake. A big one. Because this coin, the 1978 Lincoln penny, especially one with the mysterious black shade and fine condition, might just be the hidden treasure that could take your breath away. At first glance, it seems humble. The blackened surface gives it an aged, almost burnt appearance, a color that tells a story of decades of circulation. But here's the twist: that dark tone might not just be the result of age or dirt. In some cases, it can point to something much more fascinating, a minting anomaly or chemical transformation that makes certain 1978 pennies one of a kind. Let's start with the basics. The 1978 Lincoln cent was struck in 95% copper, one of the last full copper issues before the 1980 to zinc transition. This alone gives it lasting value, especially as copper prices rise. But the Denver Mint and Philadelphia Mint both produced millions that year, and as machines wore down, small imperfections began to appear. Some of these mistakes created coins unlike any others, coins that today can be worth thousands. Now, about that black color, most people assume it means damage, exposure to heat, fire, or chemicals. But a small number of these dark-toned coins were actually improperly annealed planchets. That means the copper blanks were overheated during production, giving them a deep, chocolate brown or black appearance right out of the mint presses. These rare planchet errors are extremely collectible and can command $5,000 to $8,000. If authenticated and in solid, fine to extra fine condition. But that's not the only mystery hiding in the 1978 penny. Some coins from this year were struck on foreign planchets, leftover blanks intended for other countries' coinage that accidentally slipped into the Lincoln cent production line. When discovered, these coins shocked collectors because they were lighter or darker than normal and produced a different ring when dropped on a hard surface. One such coin, 1978 penny struck on a foreign bronze planchet, sold for an unbelievable $35,000 at auction. Now, let's talk about one of the most dramatic error types found in 1978, the off-center strike. Imagine a coin where Lincoln's face is only halfway visible, the rest blank metal. It looks bizarre, but that's exactly what makes collectors go wild. A clean, off-center strike showing the full date can bring $6,000 to $10,000. Depending on condition, there's also the 1978D double die obverse, one of those varieties that can easily slip under the radar. Look closely at the date, especially the 7 and 8, or the word Liberty. Genuine doubling creates thick, rounded outlines that you can see even without magnification. In circulated condition, these can reach $2,500, while mint state examples can push $12,000 or more. Now, let's focus back on your coin fine condition. Dark black tone. You can still make out Lincoln's strong profile, his eye clear, and the edges softly worn but readable. The reverse, the Lincoln Memorial, may have flattened steps and faint lettering, but the history remains. That deep black patina gives it an antique, mysterious look that collectors sometimes call black beauty. And here's the thing: if that coloration happened naturally or during the minting process, rather than from environmental damage, it can raise the value dramatically. Collectors have reported improperly annealed 1978 pennies selling for $8,000 to $15,000, depending on how well the color and details are preserved. Even a dark-tone normal penny can hold extra interest simply because it stands out. The contrast, the age, the mystery of how it became what it is. What makes this coin truly emotional is that it represents the end of an era. The late 70s were the last calm years before the massive changes of the 1980s, before zinc, before the memorial design faded, before technology took over minting. Each 1978 copper penny, especially those with unique colors or subtle errors, is a tiny time capsule from the last breath of old-school American craftsmanship. So, the next time you see a dark, almost black Lincoln penny from 1978, don't toss it aside. Hold it to the light. Feel the history, the weight of real copper, and the quiet power of a coin that's survived nearly half a century. Because sometimes, the coins that look the most ordinary are the ones that change everything. And that brings us to the end of this incredible journey through 8 ultra-rare Abraham Lincoln pennies that could be worth a fortune. From shocking errors to forgotten designs, each coin tells a story of America, of craftsmanship, and of hidden treasures still waiting to be found in your pocket. Change.so before you spend that next penny, take one last look, because it might not just be worth 1 cent. It could be worth your retirement. Thank you for watching us Mint Mysteries. If you love discovering hidden gems and unbelievable coin stories, make sure to subscribe, tap the bell icon, and join our growing community of passionate collectors. Who knows? The next rare coin might just be sitting in your own pocket right now.